Please, just one night. Little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO, in the snow, his reply, stunned her Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was Christmas Eve, and the city of New York was glowing with holiday cheer. Lights adorned the streets. Storefronts were filled with colorful displays, and the sound of festive music echoed through the air. But not everyone felt the warmth of the season. Caleb Whitmore, a millionaire CEO, walked alone down the snowy streets. His tailored coat was no match for the chill of the winter air, but the cold didn't bother him. It wasn't the temperature that made him numb. It was the emptiness inside him. Caleb had everything anyone could wish for: money, power, a successful career, but he had nothing that mattered. His wife had passed away the year before, leaving a hole in his heart that no amount of wealth could fill. He had tried to move on, throwing himself into his work, but nothing brought him peace. As he walked through the snowy streets, Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. Another generic Merry Christmas message from someone at the office. He put it back in his pocket without checking. No one knew him. No one cared. Just as he reached a small park near the lake, he slowed down. Something wasn't right. His eyes caught a figure in the distance. A little girl, no older than 6 or 7, huddled on the bench under a thin coat, her small frame shaking in the cold. In her arms, she cradled a tiny baby, wrapped in a faded blanket. Caleb stopped in his tracks. His first instinct was to walk past, to continue with his lonely evening. But something about the scene made him pause. The girl's face was pale, her eyes wide and filled with fear. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper in the cold air. "Please, just one night," she begged, her words breaking the stillness of the night. "Please, don't leave us here." Caleb froze. His heart tightened as he saw the baby in her arms, too still, too quiet. His mind raced. What could a little girl be doing out here in the freezing cold with a baby? He approached slowly, his breath catching in his throat. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. The girl didn't answer right away. She simply held her baby tighter, as if afraid that if she let go, someone would take her away. "Please," she whispered again. "Please, don't let them take her. I just want her to be safe." Caleb's heart broke as he knelt down beside her, his hands reaching out to comfort her. "You're safe now," he said gently. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." He carefully wrapped his coat around the two of them, lifting them both into his arms. His mind was still spinning, trying to understand what was happening. Who would leave these children out here, alone in the snow? His heart was already racing, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't just walk away. He needed to help. As he carried the little girl and her baby sister to his car, he knew that this night was about to change everything. The weight of the moment, the gravity of the situation, was heavier than anything he had ever felt before. And for the first time, in a long time, he felt a spark of something other than loneliness, something that he hadn't known in years. Hope. Asterisk, asterisk. Please, just one night. Little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO in the snow. His reply stunned. Her asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. Caleb Whitmore could hardly believe what was happening. As he carried the little girl and her baby sister through the snow, everything felt surreal. The quiet weight of the two children in his arms seemed to ground him, to pull him away from the numb, lonely world he had built around himself. His mind raced with questions, but he kept his focus on the immediate need, getting them to safety. He gently placed the girls into the back seat of his car, wrapping his coat around them as best as he could. The baby stirred, but the little girl clung to her sister, her grip tight and protective. Caleb closed the door softly and quickly got into the driver's seat. He glanced at them in the rearview mirror, feeling an unfamiliar rush of emotions. The baby's breathing was shallow, and he could see the cold in their faces, their eyes wide with a fear that Caleb couldn't ignore. His heart twisted with guilt. How had they ended up out here, alone, in the dead of winter? The city, vibrant with holiday cheer, seemed miles away from the harsh reality the two girls were living in. As Caleb drove through the empty streets, the silence in the car was suffocating. The weight of his own thoughts hung over him like a cloud. He hadn't intended to stop that night. He hadn't meant to get involved. But the girl's words, the desperation in her voice, had stopped him in his tracks. Just one night, she had said. And now, here he was, carrying them both to safety, not knowing what would come next. He couldn't just turn his back on them. The car's heater hummed quietly, but it seemed to take forever for the warmth to reach the back seat. Caleb glanced at the rearview mirror again, his eyes landing on the little girl, her small frame shivering, her face pale and streaked with tears. "What's your name?" Caleb asked gently, trying to break the silence. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide, as if she had to think for a moment. "Ava," she whispered, "and my sister is Grace." Caleb's heart clenched. "Ava, Grace," he repeated softly. He couldn't fathom the pain they must have gone through. The cold, the loneliness, and now the fear of being alone in the world. It didn't make sense. As they approached the hospital, Caleb's mind spun. He needed answers. But more than that, he needed to make sure they were safe. He parked the car outside the emergency room doors and rushed to get them inside. The hospital's fluorescent lights seemed too bright after the quiet of the streets, but Caleb barely noticed. He lifted Ava and Grace out of the car, one in each arm, and hurried through the automatic doors. A nurse met him immediately, her eyes widening at the sight of the two children in his arms. "They need help," Caleb said urgently. The nurse nodded and immediately signaled for a stretcher. Caleb couldn't let go of Ava and Grace, not yet. He stood by them, his heart pounding in his chest as the nurses worked quickly. "What happened?" the nurse asked, her voice calm but concerned. Ava barely moved. She was still holding her baby sister tightly, her body shaking with the cold. She whispered, "Mommy's really sick." The words hit Caleb like a punch. "Mommy's really sick." He tried to keep his composure, but his hands trembled as he looked down at the little girl who had asked for just one night of safety. He couldn't help but wonder, what had happened to them? Where was their mother? The nurse wheeled them away, and Caleb stood frozen in the hallway, feeling a mix of helplessness and resolve. He wasn't leaving them alone. He couldn't. Ava and Grace needed more than just a warm place to sleep. They needed someone to protect them, someone to give them the love and care they had been denied for so long. Caleb wasn't sure what had drawn him to them, but he knew that in that moment, he couldn't walk away. As he stood there, watching the nurses take the girls into the emergency room, he felt something inside him begin to crack. It wasn't just pity or charity. It was something deeper, something real. For the first time in a long time, Caleb felt a spark of hope, a hope that maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference in their lives. And in the process, maybe they would make a difference in his. Caleb took a deep breath and followed them into the hospital, ready to face whatever came next. His life, and the lives of Ava and Grace, were about to change forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Please. Just one night. Little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO. In the snow. His reply stunned. Her asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. Caleb had barely slept the night after taking Ava and Grace to the hospital. His mind was spinning with questions, his heart heavy with the realization of just how much these two little girls had been through. He had stayed by their side as long as he could, but the doctors had insisted on admitting them for observation. He didn't know what had happened to their mother, or why they were alone, but the little girl's whisper still echoed in his mind. Mommy's really sick. It haunted him. What kind of world had they been living in? Caleb, who had spent years building an empire, was now facing something he hadn't planned, for something that was impossible to ignore. He had never been good with emotions, never had the time for them. But when he saw Ava's terrified face and Grace's frail body, something inside him cracked open. He had to do something. The next morning, Caleb returned to the hospital, unable to rest until he had answers. He walked through the sterile white halls, the quiet buzz of hospital activity surrounding him. He found Ava and Grace in a small room, both of them curled up in the hospital bed. Ava's hand was still holding her sister's tightly, the bond between them clear even in their exhaustion. Caleb walked to the bedside, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel vulnerable. "How are they?" he asked the nurse standing by. "They're stable for now," she said. "But we need to know more about their situation. Do you have any information on their family?" Caleb hesitated, feeling the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He looked at Ava, who was still so small and so lost, her wide eyes watching him with a mix of fear and hope. "I don't know anything about their family," Caleb admitted. "I found them on the street last night. The little one," he trailed off, his throat tightening. "She said their mother is sick and they're alone." The nurse nodded, taking notes. "I'll have someone from social services come in. We can't leave them without help. We'll get them in touch with a caseworker as soon as possible." Caleb looked at Ava again, her small face so full of sorrow. He didn't know what he was supposed to do, but one thing was clear. He couldn't just walk away from them. He couldn't let them slip through the cracks. He didn't know how to be a parent, or even a guardian, but the thought of these children being left alone again was something he couldn't bear. He spent the rest of the day at the hospital, waiting for any information. When evening came, he was exhausted, but he couldn't leave. His mind was still racing with questions. What had happened to their mother? How had they ended up alone on the streets? As the hours passed, the caseworker arrived and spoke with Caleb. She was kind, but her job was clear. "We'll need to investigate their family situation," she explained. "But for now, they're in good hands." Caleb nodded, grateful that the girls were in a safe place, but still uncertain about what the next step would be. He couldn't imagine what their lives had been like before, but he knew that no matter what happened, he couldn't leave them to face the world on their own. He was drawn to them, not out of pity, but out of something deeper, an instinct to protect, to make sure they had a chance at something better. The night passed slowly, but Caleb couldn't rest. He couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do more. The next morning, he returned to the hospital, and this time, he made a decision. He was going to take responsibility. He walked into the room, his heart pounding, and looked at Ava and Grace, still sleeping peacefully in the bed. They looked so fragile, so small. He couldn't bear the thought of them being alone in the world. He wasn't sure how he would do it, but he knew that he couldn't let them go. He couldn't let them fall through the cracks. He had the resources, the connections, the means to help them, but he didn't know if he had the right to take them in. He wasn't a parent, and he had never planned on being one. But as he stood there, watching the two little girls, something inside him shifted. This wasn't just about taking care of them, it was about giving them a chance at a better life. A life free from fear, a life where they could grow and heal. Caleb made a promise to himself in that moment. He wasn't going to let these two little girls slip away. He would fight for them, no matter what it took. For the first time in years, Caleb felt a sense of purpose. Something bigger than the work he had done. Something that reached into his very soul. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was going to be the one to give them a chance at a future. And that promise, that determination, would change everything. Asterisk, asterisk. Please, just one night. Little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO, in the snow. His reply. Stunned. Her asterisk. Asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. Caleb's decision to take responsibility for Ava and Grace was not one he made lightly. He had spent the entire night thinking about it. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, there was no turning back. He had never envisioned himself as a father. But as he stood outside the hospital, his mind swirling with uncertainty, he realized that he couldn't just walk away from these two little girls. They needed him, and whether he was ready or not, he was the one who had to step up. The caseworker had given him some paperwork to fill out, a process that made everything feel far too official. But Caleb pushed through. He wanted to make sure that Ava and Grace were safe. And if that meant navigating through the red tape, so be it. After all, it wasn't just about giving them a home. It was about giving them a chance. He signed the documents without hesitation, his pen gliding over the lines. But his thoughts were still on the girls. Where was their mother? Why were they out in the cold? Alone. Caleb couldn't let those questions go, and he wasn't going to rest until he found the answers. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and more paperwork. The hospital had confirmed that Ava and Grace were in good health, but emotionally, they were still fragile. Ava, especially, had trouble opening up. Her trust in the world had been shattered, and her only concern was her sister, Grace. Caleb didn't blame her. He knew that nothing in her life had been easy, but he also knew that he couldn't help them if they didn't trust him. Every evening, he visited the hospital, sitting by their bedside, talking to them gently, and trying to break through the walls Ava had built around herself. Slowly, she began to warm up. She would still flinch when Caleb moved too quickly, but her guard started to lower. One evening, after a long day at work, Caleb returned to the hospital and found Ava sitting up in bed, holding Grace in her lap. She was staring out the window, her face unreadable. Caleb took a seat next to her, but didn't say anything at first. He just let the silence hang between them. After a while, Ava turned to him, her eyes wary. "Why are you helping us?" she asked, her voice soft, but full of uncertainty. Caleb's heart ached at her question. He thought about the empty mansion he had returned to each night after his wife passed, the silence that had filled every room, and the lonely dinners he ate alone. He thought about how little joy he had in his life despite all his success. He had everything, and yet he had nothing. "Because I know what it's like to be alone," Caleb said quietly. "I know what it's like to feel like no one cares. And I don't want you to feel that way anymore." Ava looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she could believe him. Finally, she nodded slightly. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a breakthrough. It was a sign that she was beginning to trust him, and that meant everything. Caleb knew that it would take time to earn her full trust, but he was willing to wait. He was in this for the long haul, and he would do whatever it took to make sure Ava and Grace never had to feel alone again. As the days passed, Caleb made sure to be there for them, whether it was sitting with them during meals or simply talking to them about their favorite things. He learned that Ava loved to read, and Grace had a fascination with animals. Caleb found himself looking forward to these small moments, these glimpses into their lives. They weren't just two lost children anymore. They were part of his life now, and that realization filled him with something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. One afternoon, Caleb sat down with the caseworker again, this time to discuss their future. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he was ready. The legal process would take time, but Caleb had the resources and the determination to make sure Ava and Grace were taken care of. He could provide them with a home, an education, and a chance at a future they had never dreamed of. But he also knew that it wasn't just about providing material things. It was about showing them that they were loved, that they had someone who would always be there for them. "I want to take them in," Caleb said, his voice steady. "I want to give them a real home." The caseworker nodded, impressed by his commitment. "It's a big decision," she said, "but I think it's the right one." Caleb smiled, though it was a small, tired smile. "I don't think I have a choice," he said. "They need me." And in that moment, Caleb realized that the decision to take them in wasn't just about helping them, it was about saving himself. He had spent years running from his pain, hiding behind his work, but Ava and Grace had shown him what it meant to truly live. They had given him a reason to wake up each day, to fight for something more. He wasn't just giving them a home. They were giving him a new chance at life, too. Asterisk, asterisk, please. Just one night. Little girl, with baby begs, millionaire CEO. In the snow, his reply stunned. Her asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. Caleb had no idea what to expect when he made the decision to bring Ava and Grace into his life. He knew it would be difficult. Being a parent was never in his plans, but what he hadn't anticipated was the emotional journey that came with it. He had built his life around control, around creating something tangible. But with these two girls, he realized that control was a luxury he didn't have. The transition was hard. Ava and Grace had come a long way from the cold, lonely streets, but they were still fragile, still carrying the scars of their past. It wasn't just about giving them a home, it was about showing them that they could trust again, that they could heal. The first few weeks were a blur of ups and downs. Caleb would come home from work each day, hoping to see progress, but Ava, especially, struggled with the idea of a family. She wasn't used to having someone care for her, to have someone ask her how her day went. At first, she would sit quietly at the dinner table, barely touching her food, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Grace, on the other hand, was more willing to interact, but her small body was often racked with coughs, and she seemed perpetually tired. Caleb did what he could to comfort them. He made sure they had everything they needed, from new clothes to warm meals. But he knew that this wasn't about things. It was about rebuilding the emotional connection that had been torn apart in their lives. He had been a businessman for most of his life, but he quickly realized that money and success couldn't fix the kind of pain Ava and Grace had experienced. One evening, after dinner, Caleb sat next to Ava on the couch, watching a movie. He didn't try to force conversation, just sat with her in silence. After a while, she spoke. "Do you really want us here?" she asked, her voice quiet, but with a note of uncertainty. Caleb was caught off guard by the question. He had never thought to ask himself that. Of course, he wanted them there. He had made a promise to protect them, to give them a life they never thought possible. But as he looked at Ava's eyes, still so full of sadness, still so full of fear, he realized that she didn't know that yet. He had to show her, not just tell her. "I do want you here," Caleb replied softly. "You and Grace are part of this family now, whether you believe it or not." Ava looked up at him, searching his face, and for a moment, Caleb felt a flicker of something between them. It wasn't trust yet, but it was a step forward. Ava wasn't ready to embrace the idea of family. Her walls were still high, but Caleb was patient. He knew that healing took time, and he was willing to give it. The next few weeks saw more small victories. Ava started to talk more, though it was still only in quiet tones, and Grace's energy began to return as her health improved. Caleb's routine began to shift, too. He started taking them to the park on weekends, letting them run and play, something they hadn't been able to do for so long. One Saturday, after a trip to the park, Ava finally asked if they could bake cookies together. It was the simplest of requests, but it was a breakthrough. Caleb smiled and agreed, setting up the kitchen. As they baked together, something shifted. It wasn't the cookies or the act of cooking that made the difference, it was the shared experience. It was laughter. It was talking about their favorite flavors. It was something that felt like a normal family moment. For the first time in a long time, Caleb felt like he wasn't just taking care of Ava and Grace. He was beginning to become part of their lives, just as they were becoming part of his. By the time the cookies were done, the bond between them felt stronger. Ava and Grace were still healing, but they were no longer alone. Caleb knew that there was still a long road ahead, but for the first time, he felt hopeful. He wasn't just giving them a home. He was helping them rebuild their lives. And as for him, he was finding something he hadn't realized he was missing. A family. He had spent so long trying to build his empire, but it was in this small, quiet home that he was learning what truly mattered. It wasn't the wealth or the success. It was the love and connection they shared. It was something far more valuable than anything money could buy. Caleb realized that by helping Ava and Grace find their way, he was also finding his own path to healing. The pain of his past was still there, but it didn't define him anymore. His life had a new purpose, one that didn't revolve around control or ambition. It revolved around these two little girls and the family they were becoming together. Asterisk, asterisk. Please. Just one night. Little girl. With baby bags. Millionaire CEO. In the snow. His reply. Stunned. Her asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. Caleb's world had changed completely since Ava and Grace entered his life. What started as an obligation, a promise to keep them safe, had turned into something much deeper. It wasn't just about offering them a place to stay. It was about giving them a chance to heal. And in doing so, Caleb found himself healing too. The days turned into weeks, and although the process was slow, the bond between them grew stronger. Ava was still hesitant to fully open up, but Grace's laughter began to fill their home. It was a sound Caleb hadn't realized. He missed so much the sound of joy. He found himself looking forward to the little moments. The quiet evenings where Ava would curl up with a book, or the mornings where Grace would play with her stuffed animals, her face lit with excitement. It was during one of those mornings that Caleb realized something he hadn't considered before. He was starting to think of them as his daughters. They weren't just two kids he had taken in. They were his family. Caleb had always believed that success was about building something tangible, something that could be measured. He'd spent years building his business, his wealth, his empire. But it wasn't until he took these two little girls in that he realized what true success was. True success was about making a difference in someone else's life. It was about being there when someone needed you, not just for financial support, but for emotional support. The realization hit him hard. And for the first time in a long time, Caleb understood what it meant to be truly fulfilled. It was a warm Sunday afternoon when the next big moment came. Ava had been reluctant to join Caleb and Grace for their weekly park trips, preferring to stay inside and read. But this time, something was different. She hesitated at the door for a moment, then looked up at Caleb. "Can I come with you today?" she asked. Caleb's heart soared at the question. He'd been waiting for this moment, the moment when Ava would feel like part of the family, not just an outsider. "Of course," Caleb said, a smile tugging at his lips. "We'd love for you to come." The three of them spent the afternoon in the park. Caleb watched as Ava slowly began to relax, running alongside Grace, laughing as Grace tried to climb a jungle gym. It was a beautiful sight, his two girls, playing, living, and feeling safe. Later that evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Ava looked at Caleb, her eyes a little less guarded than before. Do you think we'll be okay?" she asked quietly, her voice almost a whisper. Caleb paused for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He knew that healing didn't happen overnight, and there would still be challenges ahead. But he also knew that they were on the right path, that they had something real now, something to hold on to. "I think we'll be more than okay," Caleb said, his voice firm with the certainty he had found in his heart. "We're a family now, and families take care of each other." Ava smiled slightly, the first real smile Caleb had seen from her in a long time. It was small, but it was a start to something bigger, something lasting. As the days passed, Caleb continued to do everything he could to help Ava and Grace adjust to their new life. He made sure to take time off work to be with them, to show them that they weren't just a responsibility, but that they mattered. He taught them how to cook their favorite meals, how to ride bikes, how to embrace life again after all the pain they had endured. Slowly, Ava began to talk more, to trust more. She started to ask questions about Caleb's past, about his life before they came into it. Caleb shared his story with her, not in an effort to make himself the hero, but to let her know that everyone had their struggles, that everyone had their broken pieces, and that no matter how broken they felt, they could still rebuild. One evening, as they all sat together in the living room, watching a movie, Caleb looked over at Ava and Grace, who were snuggled up under blankets. He smiled to himself, realizing that his life, once so empty, had found its meaning in these two little girls. They had changed him in ways he never thought possible, and he was more grateful than he could ever express. It was then that he realized that the love he had for them was not just the love of a guardian or protector, it was the love of a father. And in that moment, Caleb knew that he had become something he never expected to be, a family man. As the movie played on, Caleb sat back, his heart full. He had given Ava and Grace a chance at a new life. But in doing so, they had given him something much more valuable: purpose, love, and the kind of happiness he never knew he was missing. Asterisk, asterisk. Please, just one night, little girl, with baby begs Millionaire CEO. In the snow, his reply stunned her. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Caleb's life took yet another unexpected turn. It had been several months since he had taken Ava and Grace in, and although the transition hadn't been easy, they had started to find their rhythm. Ava was beginning to open up. Grace's laughter filled the house more often, and Caleb had found himself falling into the role of a father in a way he never expected. But that afternoon, everything changed. Caleb had just returned home from a business meeting when he received a phone call that made his heart race. It was from the social worker handling Ava and Grace's case. "Mr. Whitmore, I have some important news," she said, her voice serious but calm. "We've located the girl's mother." Caleb's heart skipped a beat. For months, he had wondered about the fate of Ava and Grace's mother. Was she truly sick? Had she abandoned them? The questions had gnawed at him, but now he was finally going to get some answers. "Where is she?" Caleb asked, his voice tight. "We've found her at a local shelter. She's asking about the girls." The news hit Caleb like a punch. He wasn't sure what to feel. Relief? Confusion? Anger? He had been the one to care for these girls, to show them love and stability. And now, their mother was back. "What happens now?" Caleb asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Well," the social worker continued, "we'll need to assess her situation. She's been through some tough times, and we need to ensure she's stable before we reunite her with the children." Caleb didn't know what to say. He knew that the girls had a right to know their mother, but he also knew how fragile their bond was. Ava had started to trust him, to see him as a father figure. Would that all fall apart? "I understand," Caleb said finally, though the weight of the situation was starting to settle on him. "Please keep me informed." After the call ended, Caleb sat in silence. The familiar feeling of uncertainty crept back in, reminding him that he didn't have all the answers. He had given so much to these girls, and now he wasn't sure what to do next. He couldn't imagine handing them back to a mother who had been absent for so long. But at the same time, he knew that he couldn't keep them from their family forever. That night, as he sat down for dinner with Ava and Grace, the weight of the conversation still lingered in his mind. Ava could sense that something was wrong, her eyes watching him carefully. "What's going on, Mr. Whitmore?" she asked, her voice soft, yet full of concern. Caleb met her gaze, his heart aching at the sight of her. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from the confusion that was swirling inside him, but he couldn't. "Ava, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "We found your mom." Ava's face froze, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. Caleb could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of what this meant. "Is she coming here?" Ava asked quietly, her voice trembling. Caleb sighed, unsure of how to answer. "I don't know yet, but we have to be ready for whatever comes next." He reached out to her, offering the comfort of his touch. "I want you to know, no matter what happens, I'm here for you. You're my family." Ava didn't say anything, but Caleb could see the tears welling up in her eyes. She was scared. Scared of losing the only family she had known. Scared of facing the unknown. Grace, who had been quietly playing with her toys, looked up at Caleb, her innocent eyes wide. "Are we still going to be a family?" she asked, her voice full of trust. The question broke Caleb's heart. He wasn't sure how to answer, but he knew that, no matter what happened, he would fight for them. "Yes, Grace," he said softly. "We will always be a family." The days that followed were filled with tense waiting. Caleb had met with the social worker several times, discussing the best course of action for Ava and Grace. They had agreed that it was important for the girls to meet their mother, but they also needed to ensure that their well-being came first. The reunion, when it finally happened, was a quiet affair. Caleb accompanied the girls to the shelter, his heart in his throat as he watched Ava's nervous glance at the door. When the door opened, Caleb's breath caught in his chest. There she was, Ava and Grace's mother. She looked different from the woman Caleb had imagined. She was frail, tired, and the lines of hardship were etched deeply into her face. She looked at Ava and Grace with eyes full of regret and longing, but there was no denying the connection between them. Ava's gaze shifted from her mother to Caleb, searching his face for some kind of answer. Caleb smiled softly, though the lump in his throat made it hard to speak. "It's okay, Ava," he said gently. "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But remember, no matter what happens, you have a family now." Ava nodded slowly, her face still a mixture of confusion and uncertainty. She stepped toward her mother, and the room fell silent. Caleb watched as the two women embraced, the reunion full of raw emotion and unresolved pain. It was clear that this moment was only the beginning of a long journey for all of them. But for Caleb, the next step was clear. He had done everything he could to help Ava and Grace heal, and now he would stand by them through whatever came next. Because family wasn't about blood, it was about the love and trust you built together. And that was something Caleb knew he would never give up on. Asterisk, asterisk, please. Just one night, little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO, in the snow his reply. Stunned her asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. The days following the emotional reunion between Ava, Grace, and their mother were a whirlwind of uncertainty for Caleb. He had hoped that their mother's return would bring clarity and healing for the girls, but it became clear that the road ahead would be far more complicated than he had imagined. While Ava and Grace had started to bond with their mother again, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they were still fragile, still not fully healed from the trauma they had endured. He had spent so much time trying to help them feel safe, to show them that they were loved, and now, with their mother back, There was a new sense of tension in the air. Ava especially seemed torn. She wanted to trust her mother, but at the same time, she was afraid. Afraid that if she gave her mother too much, she would lose the only family she had known. The family that had given her a sense of security and love. Caleb understood her fear. He had watched her grow from a quiet, withdrawn child into someone who could laugh, play, and even trust again. But now, everything was uncertain. It wasn't just about the girls. Caleb found himself struggling with his own feelings. He wanted to be there for Ava and Grace, but he couldn't ignore the nagging thought that their mother might not be able to provide the stability they needed. The past few months had been difficult for him too. He had fallen into a routine of trying to give the girls everything they needed, trying to be the father they never had. But the emotional toll it had taken on him was starting to show. He felt a deep sense of love for them, but he also felt vulnerable, exposed. For the first time in years, he was emotionally invested in someone other than himself. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Caleb sat in the living room, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the thought that maybe he wasn't enough for them. Maybe their mother was the one who could truly give them what they needed. He thought about the years he had spent building his empire, the success he had achieved, but none of it felt meaningful anymore. What was the point of all his wealth if he couldn't provide the love and support that Ava and Grace needed? Caleb sat there, deep in thought, when the sound of a soft knock at the door broke his reverie. He stood up and opened it, surprised to see Ava standing there, her eyes wide and uncertain. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. Caleb's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for this moment, waiting for Ava to open up to him. He nodded and stepped aside, letting her in. "Of course, Ava. What's on your mind?" Ava hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I don't know what to do, Mr. Whitmore. I want to be with my mom, but I don't want to lose you too." The words hit Caleb like a wave. He had known that Ava was struggling, but hearing her say it aloud made it all the more real. "Ava, you don't have to choose between us," Caleb said softly, kneeling down to her level. "You're part of my family now, and that will never change. But I also understand that you need to figure out what your relationship with your mom will be, and that's okay." Ava looked up at him, her eyes full of tears. "But what if I can't have both?" she asked. Caleb's heart ached for her. He could see the fear and uncertainty in her eyes, the fear of losing something she had come to rely on. "Ava, you don't have to choose. You can have both," Caleb said, his voice filled with warmth and conviction. "I'm always going to be here for you, and your mom will always be your mom. You don't have to give up one to have the other. And if it's too hard, we can take it one day at a time. But you're not alone in this." Ava reached out and hugged him tightly, the weight of her emotions finally breaking free. Caleb held her, feeling the immense responsibility he had taken on. He wasn't just a guardian anymore. He was a father. And for the first time in his life, he felt the overwhelming, beautiful weight of what that meant. The next few days were filled with more conversations, more moments of vulnerability and healing. Caleb spent time talking with Grace, helping her process her feelings, and even spoke with their mother, trying to understand where she stood in all of this. Slowly, things started to settle. Ava and Grace began to rebuild their relationship with their mother, but they also maintained the bond they had with Caleb. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but they were finding their way, together. Caleb realized that he didn't have to have all the answers. He didn't need to know exactly how everything would turn out. What mattered was that he was there for Ava and Grace, no matter what. The love he had for them was stronger than any fear, stronger than any uncertainty. And in the end, that was what would see them through. They had a family now, a real family, and nothing was going to change that. Asterisk, asterisk. Please, just one night. Little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO. In the snow. His reply stunned her. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. The weeks following Caleb's heartfelt conversation with Ava were full of small steps and gradual progress. It was clear that Ava and Grace were still healing, still adjusting to the idea of their mother being part of their lives again. But Caleb had never been more certain of his role in their lives. He wasn't just a guardian anymore, he was their father, and they were his family. He was determined to make sure they knew that. Despite the complexities of the situation, Caleb found himself building new routines with the girls. They had settled into a sense of normalcy, something they hadn't had in a long time. They had their little moments of laughter, their daily routines, their meals shared together, and their quiet evenings at home. Caleb made sure to stay present for them. Always there, always listening, even if the road ahead was still unclear. One Saturday afternoon, Caleb took the girls to a local museum. They had talked about it all week, and when the day finally arrived, their excitement was palpable. Grace, her energy as high as ever, ran ahead of Caleb, laughing as she tried to keep up with her own footsteps. Ava, though quieter, walked beside him, her eyes curious, as if she were taking in everything for the first time. Caleb smiled to himself as he watched them. He had never been one for these kinds of outings. His world had always been filled with work, deadlines, and meetings. But now, in these moments, he understood that it wasn't the meetings or the profits that mattered. It was these simple, beautiful moments with the people he loved. As they wandered through the exhibits, Caleb noticed Ava lingering in front of one particular painting. It was of a large, peaceful landscape, with a river winding through a forest. The colors were vibrant, and the light seemed to dance on the canvas. Caleb stood beside her, waiting for her to speak, but she said nothing. She simply stared at the painting, her face thoughtful. After a moment, she turned to him. "Do you think we could have a place like that?" she asked, her voice soft. Caleb's heart ached, but he smiled. "I think we can," he said gently. "I think we can make a place like that." Ava looked at him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Caleb saw a spark of hope in her eyes. It was small, but it was there. He could see that she was starting to believe that things could be different. That maybe, just maybe, there was a future for them that wasn't filled with fear and uncertainty. It was a moment of breakthrough, one that Caleb would hold on to for a long time. Later that evening, as they returned home, Caleb sat at the kitchen table, watching the girls settle into their evening routine. Grace was already curled up on the couch with a blanket, her favorite stuffed animal tucked under her arm. Ava, though, lingered by the door, as if she had something on her mind. Caleb looked up and met her gaze. "What's going on, Ava?" he asked. Ava hesitated, then walked over to him slowly. I've been thinking," she began, her voice quiet, "about Mom, about how things are going to be. I know she's trying, but I don't know if I can go back to how things were. I'm afraid that if I do, I'll lose you." Caleb's heart tightened at her words. He had feared this moment, feared that Ava's connection with her mother would overshadow the bond they had started to build. But he also knew that Ava needed to voice her fears, to express the uncertainty that she had been carrying for so long. He reached out, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Ava, you don't have to choose between your mom and me," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm always going to be here for you. You're not going to lose me. And your mom, she's part of your life now, but that doesn't change the fact that you have a family here too." Ava leaned into him, her small shoulders shaking slightly. Caleb could feel the weight of her emotions, the years of confusion and pain that had built up. But in that moment, he knew that they were taking one more step forward, together. Over the next few weeks, things began to settle into a new rhythm. Ava and Grace spent more time with their mother, and Caleb gave them the space they needed to rebuild that relationship. But at the same time, he continued to make sure that the girls knew they always had a place with him. He encouraged them to share their thoughts, their feelings, and their fears, knowing that the healing process was still ongoing. Caleb also took the time to meet with their mother regularly. He knew that this wasn't just about him being a father figure to the girls. It was about supporting their mother as she navigated her own path to recovery. Caleb's life had been changed in ways he hadn't expected, and it wasn't just the girls who had to heal. He was learning, growing, and discovering what it truly meant to be a family. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Caleb realized just how far they had come. Grace was talking about her favorite book. Ava was asking questions about their next family outing, and their mother was smiling from across the table. For the first time in a long time, Caleb felt at peace. He knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time in years, he felt like he had everything he needed: family, love, and the kind of purpose that money could never provide. And that was enough. Asterisk. Asterisk. Please. Just one night. Little girl. With baby Beggs. Millionaire CEO. In the snow, his reply stunned. Her asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. As the months passed, Caleb began to realize that the journey of healing wasn't just about Ava and Grace. It was about him too. He had spent so many years building his career, trying to find fulfillment in success and wealth. But he hadn't realized what truly mattered until the girls came into his life. His days were now filled with laughter, questions about their favorite foods, and moments that made him feel something deeper than he ever had before. It wasn't just the sense of purpose that kept him going. It was the undeniable connection he felt with the girls. They were no longer just the children he had taken in, they were his daughters, and they had become the most important part of his world. One evening, as they were all gathered around the dinner table, Grace was recounting a funny incident from school, and Caleb couldn't help but smile at the sight of them. Ava, now more at ease with him, was asking about a family vacation they could take together. His heart swelled with pride and love. It had taken time, but they had all made it through. Their bond had strengthened with each passing day, and Caleb realized that this was what family truly meant: shared moments, unconditional love, and the ability to grow together. As the girls settled into their new life, Caleb knew there were still challenges ahead. The process of reintegrating their mother into their lives was ongoing, and there were still many emotional hurdles to overcome. But one thing was certain: no matter what happened, Ava and Grace would always have a place in his life. They had become a part of him, and he would do whatever it took to make sure they knew they were loved and cared for. One day, as Caleb walked into the living room after a long day of work, he found Ava sitting by the window, looking out at the street below. She seemed distant, lost in thought, and Caleb's heart sank. He had seen this look on her before, the same look that had been there when they first met. He sat down beside her, not wanting to interrupt her thoughts, but also unable to ignore the unease in the air. "Ava," he said gently, his voice soft. "What's going on?" She looked at him, her eyes searching his face for a moment before she spoke. "I don't know," she replied, her voice hesitant. "I'm just scared." Caleb's heart ached for her. He knew that even though she had come a long way, the trauma of her past was never far behind. "Scared of what?" he asked, his tone reassuring. Ava bit her lip, her eyes focusing on her hands in her lap, scared that everything's going to fall apart. That maybe I'm just not meant to have a happy life. The words hit Caleb hard, but he didn't flinch. He understood the fear behind them. He had felt the same way at times. The weight of responsibility, the fear of failure, the constant worry about whether he was doing enough to help them. But Caleb had learned one thing over the past months. Happiness wasn't something that was given to you. It was something you built. And that's what they were doing together. Building a future. "Ava," Caleb said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know things have been hard, but you're not alone anymore. We're a family. And no matter what, we're going to get through this. You're strong, and I'm so proud of how far you've come." Ava looked up at him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Caleb smiled at her, trying to convey the depth of his feelings with a simple expression. "You don't have to be scared, Ava," he continued. "You've already built something incredible, and that's a future worth fighting for." The room was silent for a moment, and then Ava finally gave him a small, hesitant smile. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Caleb could see the flicker of hope in her eyes, and it made his heart swell with pride. The journey hadn't been easy, but they had come so far, and now they were standing together, stronger than ever. The road ahead might still be uncertain, but Caleb knew that, no matter what, they would face it as a family. Ava and Grace had shown him a love he never thought possible, and in return, he would always be there for them, offering the kind of love and support they had never had before. For the first time in a long time, Caleb felt at peace with his life. He didn't need to be perfect. He didn't need to have all the answers. All he needed was to keep showing up, to keep being there for the girls, and to keep building the family they had started together. It wasn't just about the past or the future. It was about the present. And right now, he had everything he needed: love, family, and the chance to make a real difference in the lives of the two people who had changed his world. Together, they were stronger than any challenge that could come their way. Asterisk, asterisk, please. Just one night. Little girl with baby begs millionaire CEO in the snow. His reply stunned her. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. As the weeks rolled into months, Caleb's life with Ava and Grace had become a steady rhythm of family life. There were still challenges, still moments of doubt and fear, but there was also progress. Ava and Grace were healing, and Caleb was learning just how deeply love could run. He had once been a man consumed by his work, by building an empire. But now, his focus was on something more real, more fulfilling. As the girls settled into their new life, Caleb was no longer just their protector. He was their father. The role had changed him, made him more compassionate, more patient, more willing to embrace what was truly important. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Ava, who had been quieter than usual, finally spoke up. "Mr. Whitmore," she began, her voice hesitant but steady. "I've been thinking about my mom." Caleb's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the process of healing wasn't linear, that Ava's feelings about her mother were complicated, but he also knew how important it was to give her space to express them. "What about her?" Caleb asked gently. Ava looked down at her plate, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. "I know you've been there for me. I know you've always been there for Grace and me. But I don't know if I can ever forgive her for what happened." Caleb's chest tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "It's okay to feel that way," he said softly. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. It's okay to be confused. Healing takes time." Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "I just don't know if I can trust her again. I want to. But—" Her voice trailed off, and Caleb saw the uncertainty in her face. It was a look he knew all too well. The fear of being hurt again. The fear of losing the only stability she had ever known. Caleb reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to make any decisions right now, Ava. Take your time. Your feelings are valid. And whatever you decide, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Ava's eyes welled up, and she quickly wiped the tears away. Caleb squeezed her hand, offering a small smile. He didn't have the answers. He couldn't tell her how to fix the broken parts of her heart, but he could promise her that he would always be there, no matter what. Grace, who had been quietly playing with her food, looked up at Ava. "I love you, Ava," she said simply, her voice full of innocence and truth. Caleb's heart swelled at the words. Grace had always been open with her emotions, but the raw simplicity of her love for her sister was a reminder of how deep family bonds could run, even when life tried to tear them apart. Ava smiled, wiping her eyes. "I love you too, Grace." Caleb sat back in his chair, his mind swirling with everything Ava had said. He knew it wouldn't be easy for her to forgive her mother, and he didn't expect her to. But he also knew that, just like her, he had his own wounds to heal. He hadn't been perfect in his own life, but what mattered was that they were all trying to move forward, trying to love again. Later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, Caleb sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. His thoughts drifted back to his own past, to the pain he had carried with him for years. His wife's passing had left a void in his heart, one that had never truly healed. But now, with Ava and Grace, he was learning that healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about building something new, something stronger. As he sat there, he realized just how much he had grown over the past months. He had come to understand that being a father wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up every day for the people you loved. The next morning, Caleb woke up early, his mind already on the girls. He had made a decision. It was time for him to have a conversation with their mother. The healing process wasn't going to be quick, and there would be obstacles along the way. But he couldn't keep avoiding the reality that their mother was a part of their lives, and it was time for everyone to face that truth. He spent the day making arrangements, setting up a meeting with their mother. When he arrived at the shelter where she was staying, he found her sitting alone, her face a mixture of sadness and hope. "We need to talk," Caleb said gently as he sat down across from her. She looked up, her eyes full of uncertainty. "About the girls?" she asked softly. Caleb nodded. "Yes, about the girls. about their future. The conversation was long and difficult, but necessary. Caleb and their mother talked about what it meant for Ava and Grace to have both of them in their lives. There were tears, there were apologies, but in the end, there was understanding. It wasn't going to be easy. The road ahead was still full of uncertainty, but Caleb was more certain than ever of what he wanted. He wanted the girls to have the chance to heal, to build relationships with both of their parents, and he was willing to help them get there. When he left the shelter that evening, Caleb felt a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. There was still a lot of work to be done, but for the first time in months, he felt hopeful. He wasn't doing this alone anymore. He had a family, one that was messy, complicated, and beautiful in its own way. And for the first time in his life, Caleb knew that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Asterisk, asterisk. Please. Just one night. Little girl, with baby begs. Millionaire CEO, in the snow. His reply stunned. Her asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. The days that followed Caleb's meeting with the girl's mother were filled with uncertainty, but also a quiet sense of resolution. Ava and Grace were still processing everything that had happened, but Caleb could see that they were beginning to understand the complexity of their situation. They were beginning to heal, though in their own ways and at their own pace. Ava had started to talk more openly about her feelings, though she still struggled with the idea of her mother being in her life again. But there were moments, brief but significant, when she would allow herself to be vulnerable. Grace, too, had her own quiet way of dealing with things. She had always been more carefree, but even she had begun to sense the shift in the air. Caleb watched the girls, doing his best to respect their space, while also providing them with the stability they needed. He knew that this wasn't going to be an easy process, but he also knew that they were on the right path. He was there for them, not just as a guardian, but as a father, someone who would stand by them no matter what. One evening, as they all sat down for dinner, Caleb noticed that the atmosphere was different. Ava was talking more, laughing quietly with Grace, and even their mother was joining in the conversation. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Caleb had always believed that family wasn't just about blood. It was about the connection, the bond that you built over time. And right now they were building something together. After dinner, Ava approached Caleb as he was cleaning up the dishes. She stood in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her, her face serious. "Mr. Whitmore," she began, her voice soft. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About Mom, about us, and I think I'm ready." Caleb stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. "Ready for what?" he asked gently. Ava took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I'm ready to try. To let my mom back in. I don't know what it will look like, but I think I'm ready." Caleb's heart swelled with pride, but there was also a deep sense of relief. He knew how much courage it had taken for Ava to come to this decision. It wasn't just about accepting her mother back into her life, it was about trusting again, about letting go of the fear that had been holding her back. "I'm proud of you, Ava," Caleb said softly, walking over to her and placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to have all the answers, but this is a huge step, and no matter what, I'll be here for you, okay?" Ava nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "I know. Thank you. Mr. Whitmore, thank you for everything. Caleb smiled at her, then gave her a quick hug. He didn't say anything more, knowing that words weren't always necessary. The love between them had already been established, and that was enough. The next few weeks were filled with moments of tenderness and challenge. Ava and Grace continued to spend time with their mother, but Caleb was never far from their thoughts. He made sure to stay involved, to remain present, even as their relationship with their mother evolved. Caleb knew that the road to healing was long, but he also knew that it was one they were all willing to walk together. One afternoon, after the girls had returned from spending time with their mother, Caleb took them to the park for a quiet walk. He could see the difference in them. They were lighter, more at ease, as if a weight had been lifted. Ava, in particular, seemed more relaxed, her shoulders no longer tense with fear. She was walking beside him, asking questions about the park, about the flowers, about life. Caleb realized that this was what it meant to be a family. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about fixing everything right away. It was about being there, showing up, and doing the best you could each day. As they sat on a bench together, Caleb looked at the two girls and smiled. "You know," he said, "this is the happiest I've been in a long time. You both have taught me so much." Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "You've taught us too," she said quietly. Caleb smiled, his heart swelling with love for them. He had come to understand that family wasn't just about blood or shared history. It was about the love and trust you built together, no matter the obstacles. It wasn't about having everything figured out. It was about the journey, the shared moments, and the unconditional love that held them all together. As they walked back to the car, Caleb felt a quiet sense of peace settle in his heart. He knew that the future wasn't certain, but for the first time, he felt ready for whatever came next. He had a family now, a real family, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that love was the foundation they had built, and nothing could take that away. Asterisk, asterisk. Please. Just one night. Little girl with baby begs. Millionaire CEO in the snow. His reply stunned. Her asterisk asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with the story. It was a bright, crisp morning when Caleb woke up, feeling a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in years. The weight of the past had not completely disappeared, but it no longer seemed like it was crushing him. The journey with Ava and Grace had been long and filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with love, laughter, and moments of quiet connection that had reshaped his life. He had started this journey as a man trying to fill a void, but now he realized that the void had been filled not with wealth or success, but with the love of these two incredible girls. He had come to understand that family wasn't about perfection, it was about the shared moments, the kindness, the patience, and the commitment to one another through the highs and lows. Caleb had done his best to offer Ava and Grace stability, and in return, they had shown him how to open his heart again. They had shown him that love could be messy, complicated, and imperfect, but it was always worth it. As he stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for the girls, he reflected on how far they had come. Ava, who had once been so guarded, was now laughing freely with Grace as they set the table. Grace, with her playful energy, was full of life, her infectious smile making it impossible for Caleb not to smile back. The house, once cold and empty, now felt like a home. Caleb had never been a man to dwell on the past, but the changes in his life were undeniable. He had watched Ava and Grace grow, not just in height, but in their capacity to love and trust. He had seen them overcome so much pain, loss, and fear, and come out stronger on the other side. Ava's relationship with her mother was still a work in progress, but Caleb had faith that, in time, they would find their way. What mattered most was that they were all trying, all learning to navigate this new chapter together. When breakfast was ready, Caleb called the girls to the table, and they all sat down to enjoy the meal. There was an easy comfort between them now, a rhythm to their mornings that had taken time to develop, but felt natural. As they ate, Caleb noticed Ava looking out the window, her gaze thoughtful. He could tell she was still processing everything that had happened, but she was no longer the same quiet, withdrawn girl who had arrived at his door months ago. She had grown, and so had he. "What's on your mind?" Caleb asked, his voice warm and encouraging. Ava turned to him, her eyes reflecting the calm that had settled in her heart. "I was just thinking about how much has changed," she said quietly. "How different everything feels now. I'm not afraid anymore." Caleb's heart swelled with pride. He had always known Ava was strong, but hearing her say those words meant more than anything. It meant that, despite everything, she had found a way to heal. "You're doing great," Caleb said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm proud of you, Ava. You're stronger than you know." Ava smiled at him, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore." Caleb smiled back, but before he could say anything else, Grace piped up, her voice full of excitement. "Are we going to the park today?" she asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. Caleb chuckled. "If that's what you want to do, then yes." The girls squealed with joy, and the room filled with the sound of their laughter. Caleb watched them, his heart full. He had learned so much from Ava and Grace. They had taught him about the importance of love, trust, and patience. They had shown him that family wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up, every day, and doing the best you could for each other. After breakfast, they headed out to the park. The sun was shining. The air was crisp, and Caleb couldn't remember the last time he had felt this content. As they walked through the park, Caleb watched the girls run ahead, laughing and playing. Ava, once so unsure of the world around her, was now embracing life with a sense of freedom and joy. Grace, with her boundless energy, was chasing after her sister, eager to share every moment. Caleb couldn't help but smile as he watched them. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real, and it was enough. As the day went on, Caleb felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never known. He had built an empire, but none of it compared to the feeling of watching the girls grow, watching them find happiness and healing in a world that had once seemed so uncertain. It wasn't about the wealth he had accumulated or the success he had achieved. It was about the love and connection he had found with Ava and Grace. It was about the family they had built together. When they returned home later that evening, Caleb looked at the girls as they settled into their evening routine, and he realized just how far they had all come. They had faced their fears, their doubts, and their pain, and together, they had emerged stronger. Caleb knew that the future was still uncertain, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He had a family now, a real family, and that was all that mattered. No matter what the future held, they would face it together, and that was enough to make him feel like the luckiest man alive.